Please be seated.
The court is back in session. Mr. Šešelj, you have the floor.
Now we come to the issue of Sarajevo. At the very beginning of the war, we had a large group of SRS volunteers in Sarajevo. They took part in the fighting for Grbavica II and for Krasno. This group was led by Branislav. Mr. Šešelj, please repeat the two names. I organized transportation for Branislav Gavrilović.
Mr. Šešelj, would you be so kind as to repeat the names? The interpreters were not able to hear the names of the people you mentioned.
Branislav Gavrilović, a.k.a. Brne. This name is being mentioned quite often. He is a Chetnik Vojvoda. And the other one is Srđan Glamočanin, a man who deserved a lot due to his services in the war, but I did not give him the title of Vojvoda because his father was the vice president of the Serbian Radical Party. Jovan Glamočanin testified here to the effect that he had been coached by Zoran Đinđić to give false testimony against me. The OTP devoted a lot of attention to a telephone conversation that I had at the time. Around 18 volunteers found themselves surrounded in Krasno. They were much better in the fighting skills compared to other Serb forces, and due to the fact that there was no coordination, there was danger of them all being killed. Branislav Gavrilović, who was wounded, rang me up, and you have this intercept. In this conversation, I explained to him that I wanted to get in touch with Radovan Karadzic, and I failed to do so. But I sent a message to the leadership of Republika Srpska to help the volunteers immediately and to help them to pull out. Otherwise, we shall withdraw all the volunteers from Bosnia and Herzegovina. Maybe my threat was an exaggerated one. Maybe they would have helped them even without that. But at any rate, the assistance rendered was an efficient one. And this is all you have, the recording of this telephone conversation of mine. Maybe you have an intercept of a conversation that I had with Katarina Dučić, who worked at the Crna agency. We studied together political sciences in Sarajevo, and she knew Radovan Karadzic very well, so I used her to convey messages over the phone and for passing on my request to have the volunteers pulled out from the encirclement. Now, you people from the Hague OTP, why didn't you ask yourself, why don't you have any other intercepts of mine? You only have this conversation which necessitated an urgent call to be made. Here's the reason why. The reason is because I am a long-standing anti-communist dissident, a veteran who knew very well how to make contacts and who did not rely on telephone calls.
Drugih ljudi koji ste I meni dostavili.
There are plenty intercepts of calls by other people, some of them you disclosed to me, including with Branislav Gavrilović and Maja Gojković, then Vice President of the Serbian Radical Party, who talk over the phone and blabber all sorts of things. Of course, there's nothing incriminating to me in those conversations, but as far as I'm concerned, you cannot find a single telephone call that you could use even to illustrate events, let alone incriminate me. I'm an experienced anti-communist veteran who learned a long time ago what wiretapping means and what it could lead to. However, that does not matter for the main problem. We had a lot more volunteers of the Serbian Radical Party in the area of Sarajevo. I, for instance, remember the group commanded by Jovo Stojic, the group that took part in the fighting around Poljim. You have no idea about that. You focused on 3 Chetnik voivodas, valuable members of the party, with whom we never actually sent any volunteers. Whenever I came to Sarajevo, I visited the unit of Slavko Aleksić, made up of volunteers from all sides of the world. Most numerous were Russians, but there were also Ukrainians, Bulgarians, Frenchmen, 1 German, 1 Japanese man, and people from some other countries. And I visited him every time. Slavko Aleksić was a very valiant fighter, a good man, the pride of the Serbian Radical Party. Unfortunately, after the war, under the influence of Vojvoda Đujić, with whom he communicated directly, he took sides with Biljana Plavšić, and that's where our friendship ended. He remained a voivoda. Nobody revoked his title, but I stopped my communication with him because I recognized Biljana Plavšić as a traitor very early on, when many others didn't. And they later regretted it bitterly. But we did not send volunteers to the unit of Slavko Aleksić. Second, Slavko Aleksić was, at the beginning of the war, member of the municipal board of the Serbian Democratic Party. Then he joined the Serbian Radical Party. He was first mobilized as a policeman, and then he established his separate unit. Not a single war crime can be linked with the name of Slavko Aleksić. Not one.
Drugo lice koje se pominje je
Another person that's mentioned is Branislav Gavrilović Brne. You know how he came to the area of Sarajevo when the operation of our volunteers was finished in the area of Grbavica, and when they returned to Serbia, Branislav Gavrilović remained in Sarajevo because he is a native of Sarajevo. You have a whole series of his telephone conversations made from Sarajevo before the war in Bosnia-Herzegovina. He was in love with Maja Gojković at the time, so that's a bit of pillow talk you can hear on those tapes. You gave me a lot of them. Branislav Gavrilović remained in the town where he was born, in Sarajevo. He joined the Ilidža brigade of the VRS, and he took part in the fighting for Igman. And he rallied a number of volunteers from that area. Maybe he was joined by a few people from Serbia, but he was not joined by anyone who was sent by the war staff of the Serbian Radical Party. At one point he was very angry in May 1992 when Nikola Poplašen was appointed temporary president of the Serbian Radical Party of Republika Srpska. He even left the Serbian Radical Party, then formed the Serbian Freedom Movement, and he had 400 members. He gave me a list later. I am not denouncing or distancing myself or repudiating any of my members or any Chetnik Vojvoda, but I am pointing out the facts in order to expose your lies, to disabuse you of your misconceptions. Branislav Gavrilović did not commit any war crimes. You can see from the statement of Perica Koblar how much care he took of his men. He made them wear proper uniforms and helmets and protection gear to keep them from being killed by the Muslims. But you have all seen how Perica Koblar fared here in the courtroom. The third person is Vasilije Vidović, also known as Vaske. He was one of the founders of the Serbian Chetnik movement in Belgrade. One of the first 100 signatories when we tried to register the Serbian Chetnik movement as a political party. His nickname then was Jaro. We didn't call him Vaske. And he left with one of the volunteer groups for Benkovac in 1991. When I toured the Republic of Serbia and Krajina in November 91, I also visited that unit in Benkovac. And the members of that unit were sitting in that cafe where I talked to Serb soldiers, trying to persuade them into wearing helmets. You have shown that video clip. After that, I had no more contact with Vasilije Vidović. When the Vance plan was accepted, he returned to Ilijaš, and when the war broke out in Bosnia and Herzegovina, he formed one unit of volunteers, platoon strong, I believe, or half a company, around 50 men. I have given you, judges, his war diaries. I actually pushed those war diaries on you, although you didn't want to admit them into evidence. That was a gift to you from the Chetnik Vojvoda, Vasilije Vidović, with his compliments. I didn't hear anything about Vaske Vidović, nor did I have any contact with him from 1994 onwards. When I bestowed the title of Vojvoda on many on Mount Romania in 1993, I did not include him. Before 1994, I never went to Vogošća, Ilijaš, Rajlovac, Ilidža, or Hadžići. In 1994, when I came to inspect the front line in Sarajevo, Vasilije Vidović came to Grbavica and asked me to accompany him to Iliash the next day. And I first visited his unit in 1994. And only after that I proclaimed him a Serbian Chetnik Vojvoda. When I saw the unit, when I saw that all those men had joined the Serbian Radical Party, that they were all valiant fighters, I did that. They had spent the entire war at Čekrčići, and that is a village rather forward outside Iliash in the direction of Visoko. It had certain importance, and thanks to the unit of Vasilije Vidović, the Muslims were never able to take that position, and they were never able to advance from Visoko towards Iliash.
Nikada mi u jedinicu Vaska Vidovića nismo slali dobrovoljce.
We never sent volunteers from Belgrade to Vaske Vidović's unit, nor did he ever ask for it. We sent volunteers to many other places en masse, the Nikšić Plateau, for instance, near Olovo, because there were sensitive Serb positions there, and the area was not very densely populated. There were not enough Serb fighters, so our volunteers went there. Many of them got even killed there, and people from other areas of Republika Srpska also went there. I next went to Iliash in 1995. By that time, Vasilije Vidović was already a Chetnik Vojvoda. I again inspected all the Serb positions in Iliash, Rajlovac, Ilidža, and in Hadžić. On my way back to Pale, at Poljine, I was in Vasilije Vidović's car. He was driving, and I was sitting next to him. That's the Jeep with a plastic skull on the bonnet. Tomislav Nikolić was also in the car. The current Western agent, in whose recruitment the French intelligence service was involved as well. There was also Nikola Poplošan and a volunteer from Bijeljina, who was our security man. At Poljine, the Muslims fired from a Maljutka launcher at us. The Muslims had probably picked their best sharpshooter, but his hand must have shaken. He didn't hit our car. The projectile hit the road under the forward right wheel. A pillar of smoke and fire rose next to me. The Jeep was damaged. Vasilije Vidović stopped for a moment. I told him drive on, and we quickly left the area that was within the Muslim range. That was our good luck, or maybe bad luck for you, bad luck for all Serb enemies. It was a close call, but we did not lose our lives. Why am I saying all this to you now? To show you that I remember all the details perfectly well, and that you were very sloppy in presenting your facts. Not a single war crime can be attributed to Vasilije Vidović. You spoke about certain crimes in Ješevo, and you linked them with the fact that his unit was there fighting for Leševo, but you did not have a witness that he was involved in any crimes. You had a witness here speaking about the execution of Muslims, and he never mentioned, not a word, about Vasilije Vidović or his fighters. You had another witness, Safet Sejdić, who fought on the Serb side. He was a Roma. He was issued with the most precious machine gun, M84, the so-called sower of death. He earned himself a very good reputation in the fighting. But after the Dayton Accords, he remained in Iliash, and he was exposed to such mistreatment by the Muslim authorities and some Muslims that amounted to torture, and he appeared here as a witness. Do you remember some of the more blatant lies he said? That on the Nikšić plateau, on a very definite day, he had seen Radovan Karadžić, Ratko Mladić, and myself. I made fun of it, saying that Radovan Karadžić was in Belgrade at the time, and Ratko Mladić called me as well, saying that he could not have been there either, because it would have been too much to place such three personalities in the same place at the same time. It would have been too great a loss for the Serbian people. But you bought it all, although I was only joking. You could have easily checked. When I went to the Nikšić plateau, I didn't go from the direction of Iliash. I went from Mount Romania. I inspected the whole front line towards Olovo. I even went to the house of the Serbian Vladika, Serbian cleric Longin. His mother was still alive at the time. None of those lies you told has any basis in reality. As far as Nikola Poplošin is concerned, he is your collaborator. He gave you his statement in secret. He never informed anyone from the Serbian Radical Party that he had spoken to OTP investigators and provided them with a statement. That statement speaks very badly of me, but he never provided any grounds for incrimination. We later expelled him from the party. We expelled him even before we found out he was your collaborator, because he had entered into unprincipled agreements with the local authorities in Banja Luka so that his best friend could become the manager of a factory there. The Serbian Radical Party wouldn't have him anymore. Why didn't you bring him here to testify? He did testify in Krajišnik. Why are you ascribing to me things that he may have done? He was not a volunteer of the Serbian Radical Party. He was proclaimed a Serbian Chetnik Vojvoda, but not before 1995. You know why? Because by that time he was a university professor in Banja Luka, and at one point when the Muslims from Bihać toward the end of 1994 or early 95 broke through Serb positions and occupied a lot of territory, he then went to intervene as part of a hastily gathered student detachment and was very prominent as a good fighter. That was the reason why we gave him the title of Vojvoda. And also I had personal motives. He was president of the Party for Republika Srpska. And Tomislav Nikolić's title of Vojvoda was also politically motivated. He was not a very good fighting man, although he did spend 2 months on the front line in Slavonia. Still, it was not his merit in war that earned him the title. We had, for instance, Vojvoda Jevđević in the Second World War. He was never a commander, he was a politician, but he was still proclaimed Vojvoda. And I thought I might do the same with Nikolić. I'm talking about Dobroslav Jevđević.
You're attributing to me the fact that the newspaper Western Serbia was published. Why didn't you ask Nikola Poplashin about that newspaper? Because it was under his control and not mine. Only 11 issues were published. And then the whole project was dropped. Why do you not compare the Western Serbia with the greater Serbia, and you will see how big the differences are? Did you find the caricature that may have caused religious intolerance in that newspaper? Why didn't you find anything like that in the Greater Serbia? Did you find my name among the publishers of the Western Serbia? No. And you still say that that was a newspaper under my control. How impertinent on your part. In Sarajevo, no crimes that were committed can be attributed to CRS volunteers, and you didn't manage to prove anything to that effect. Everything that you did has been crushed to the tiniest fragments. Some crimes did happen sporadically. Why didn't you investigate them? SRS volunteers could not take prisoners of war to the front lines to dig trenches there. Why did you not establish who was it who did that? Who had the authority to do that? Who was in a position to do that? Or, for example, Planina Kucha or something else. The name escapes me now. This is also what you have attributed to us, although those things had nothing whatsoever to do with us. And now let's look at Mostar and Nevesinje. In your closing argument, you say that General Perisic destroyed Mostar and that SRS volunteers, or a unit of volunteers under the command of Oliver Denis Barta, was under the command of Momčilo Perisic. First of all, Mostar was not destroyed at that time. Whatever Momčilo Perisic fired at with his artillery, there is ample evidence that he first issued a warning to the Croatian side over the radio that he would attack this or the other civilian target, and he warned the population in advance to move from that area, and that's a fact. Well, Perisic was there. He firmly held one part of Mostar, the left bank of the Neretva River. When the JNA withdrew, the front line fell. The group of volunteers headed by Oliver. Nobody can say anything bad about them, not even your false witnesses could. They managed to locate some alleged individual, Šešelj man, one who spent his days sharpening his bayonet, and similar stupid things. On the 25th of May, Barrett was with me in Podgorica. And he was wounded there when a hand grenade was thrown at me. He was in my close vicinity and suffered many wounds on his legs and the lower part of his abdomen. I have brought you a book, The Podgoric's Assassination, and in that book you could read about the entire trial, the statements of all those who were wounded, who were the eyewitnesses to the event, judgment against Shabotic, who was a Muslim and who was convicted to a 15-year imprisonment sentence, and he spent that time in jail. And you had all that. Nothing can be said about that volunteer unit. What happened next? In late May, the JNA withdrew from Mostar. Some units of the newly established Republika Srpska army stayed behind. And then there was a Muslim uprising in the depth of the territory at the foot of Volizh. Those Muslims had received a lot of weapons from the JNA for their own personal security. The JNA trusted them. And when the JNA withdrew, all of a sudden they attacked the Serbs from behind. They killed a Serbian officer, and at that time all the front lines along the Neretva were crushed. Klepci, Tasovčići, Pribilovci, and other Serbian villages fell after having suffered huge and atrocious crimes committed by Ustasha during the Second World War. They survived the last war as well, but no Serbs remained living there. Some were killed and the others had to flee. In Herzegovina at the time, we had several hundred volunteers under the command of Branislav Vakic in an area known as Bobane. This is a wide area in the municipality of Trebinje, bordering on the municipality of Dubrovnik. There was a large number of Serbian villages there, all inhabited by Orthodox population. There were also 2 Catholic villages and another village with a majority Orthodox population with 3 Catholic tribes in Kievodonje. However, all those villages were scarcely populated after the 70s of last year, when the communists abolished the railroad from Čapljina and Dubrovnik. People no longer saw a good perspective for life there, so they moved out. Some went to Trebinje, some Dubrovnik, and some even further afield. This was therefore a very large area, but sparsely populated, so nobody had to be defended there. That's why Vučurović asked for volunteers from Serbia, and that's why several hundred volunteers of the SRS arrived there. Having heard that the front lines were falling along the Neretva River, Branislav Vakic and 19 volunteers went to Nevesinje. They reported to Nevica Gušević, who was a colonel and the commander of the Nevesinje brigade, and offered his help. Gušić said that he could not wait for them to return and bring all the volunteers. He told them, "You are now here, and if you wish to help us, you have to start fighting now." Vakic did engage, and 4 of the 20 killed. The Crown witness for the OTP, Goran Stoparić, told us all that in the courtroom. He was there and he was wounded there. I didn't know many of those details. I heard them for the first time from him here in the courtroom. And now what happened next was that a volunteer from Vakic's group, who was either a platoon or a commander or a company commander, had an argument with Vakic, and he abandoned the unit. He went to Boročko Lake, where he got killed. And on the basis of that, you drew a conclusion that we also had volunteers on Boročko Lake. But that's not true. There was just one of them, so you lied. We had only those 20 volunteers under Vakic's command in the territory of Nevesinje. 4 of them were killed, 2 or 3 were wounded. You are attributing to me the crimes that happened near Zalik. actually near Dravčići, Sutina and Zalika near Dravčići. We never had any volunteers there. The OTP itself has provided me with the documents issued by the cantonal court in Most, an indictment, a final decision. We had all those in the courtroom. And you can tell from those that there was a trial against 20 or 30 people and that there was nobody among them from Serbia. They were all locals. And one of the false witnesses stated that there must have been Šešeljevci among them, and then the OTP takes that for granted and says, yes, there were Šešeljevci there. Identify just one. Identify that notorious person from Vranje, of whom you say and you allege that he had blown up the Catholic Church in Nevesinje. Please find him. How come that none of us knows anything about that person from Vanje? How come Vakic doesn't know anything about him? I am not trying to distance myself from anybody. I have presented all the facts. At the first elections after the fall of the communist dictatorship in Nevesinje, the Serbian renewal movement came into power. When I arrived in Nevesinje in 1991, I did not visit the municipality because I knew that the members of the Serbian renewal movement were in power. I walked through Nevesinje, I inspected the front lines, because in 1991 there was already a front line there because the Croats had rebelled in Western Herzegovina before that. There were war activities going on in there as early as 1991. You are attributing to me Arsen Grahovec. With all due respect towards him, he got killed in fighting. And I don't know whether he is guilty of anything or not. I don't want to go into that. I submitted a document to you showing that Arsen Grahovac was an MP on behalf of the Serbian renewal movement. And that's where the whole discussion ends for me. You have found a television clip showing that during the street barricades in 1991, somebody stated that he doesn't recognize anybody but Milan Martic and me as their commander. This would be ridiculous if it wasn't said. That person could have stated anything. Much ado about nothing. And then you draw a conclusion that that person was a commander there. Are you normal at all? No, you're not. Arsen Grahovac headed the Karađorđe detachment. I can't say anything bad about that detachment either. However, that detachment was part of the light brigade under the command of Bora Antelj. And the Serbian renewal movement sent the so-called Serbian Guard to join that brigade from Serbia. You heard a person from Hrtkovci, Alexa H., who confirmed that he had gone there as a member of the Serbian Guards. Crimes occurred there. We heard 2 young Muslim women whose children were killed, whose husbands were killed, and who were detained at Boračko Lake. And they were sexually abused there over a long period of time. For a year or perhaps 2, I don't know how long it lasted. They appeared here in the courtroom. And they assisted my defense. They assisted me with shedding light on some things. they too thought that they had seen the Red Berets and Šešeljevci at Vorečko Lake. As it turned out, they were members of that unit belonging to the Cavalry Light Brigade. And that's all. You also saw a document that was signed by Krsto Savić, the head of police in Nevesinje. He also tried to attribute some things to Šešeljevci, and that Krsto Savić is notorious for the fact that he had killed Radovan Radović, a Chetnik voivoda, from the back, and that happened in January 1998. And then he fled to Banja Luka, and for a long time he was not accessible to law enforcement agencies. And then he was arrested and tried in Sarajevo and convicted by the Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina. You admitted that document of his into evidence at face value. Why didn't you invite him as a witness? He would have been a very good OTP witness because he was the head of the police in Nevesinje. He could have shed a lot of light on how things transpired. You didn't do that because you don't want the truth to be known. You want to...
Pa ko šta ščepa?
To muddy the waters because you can catch most fish in muddy waters. But you failed miserably, and that's why this trial is also failing miserably, and this is why this trial has undermined the Hague Tribunal more than anything else. You have actually called witnesses that have helped the defense. You had very high hopes about a witness, and then he confirmed that Oliver Barrett's unit was a very disciplined unit who did not commit any crimes. He also confirmed that Radovan Radovic's unit was also disciplined and had not committed any crimes. How did Radovan Radović become a Chetnik voivoda? Sometime in 1993 or perhaps 1994, I visited Herzegovina. Radovan Radović, who had already had a unit bigger than a company, it was almost a battalion by that time, and that unit's name was the Radovic's Volunteers or Radovic's Guards. He came and he joined the Serbian Radical Party. Everybody in Herzegovina knew that he was a great fighter, a very capable commander. I proclaimed him a Serbian Chetnik voivoda. I toured the positions of his unit at the foot of Veleš together with him. It was recorded that I opened fire from a heavy artillery tool. From there, one of your false witnesses said that I opened fire on Mostar, and then it turned out that the distance between that place and Mostar is over 30 kilometers, and that there is a huge hill between Mostar and that place. Unfortunately, I could not reach Mostar from that heavy artillery tool, but maybe I did reach some of the Muslim positions from there. I sincerely hope I did.
Dakle, to bi bila...
So that would be almost the whole truth about the events in Herzegovina. We had a few more volunteer groups there in Kalinovinik, for example. We had a somewhat larger group of volunteers. Barrett was in command there as well. And I believe that in 1994, we suffered great losses when 10 of our volunteers were killed. As a result of poor synchronization of activities among various Serbian units. The SRS volunteers were ahead of everybody else. They started the assault, and the Muslims opened fire on them, and we had a total of 10 casualties. 10 people died.
You didn't even notice that we had volunteers in Kalanovic. We had them in many other places as well. But nobody can say that a crime of any kind can be attributed to SRS volunteers. There may have been fear among the Croats and Muslims. They were afraid of the Serbian Chetniks, but this fear is based on the prejudices that had been nurtured for decades by the communists who portrayed the Chetniks as major criminals from the Second World War. The OTP says that Chetniks are extremists and that I supported extremists and an extremist military or quasi-military organization that relies on extremist traditions. The Second World War Chetniks were not extremists during the Second World War. Those extremists were communists, and these communist extremists managed to grab the power, having killed around 200,000 people. I cannot possibly defend all the Chetniks from the Second World War. I know that Voivoda Pavle Đurišić's unit committed a crime in Foča, but I do know as well that another major crime preceded this crime committed by Muslim Ustašas against Serbian civilians. That's the only one crime that I know about, and nobody was able to tell me about any other crime committed against the Croats. And I'm talking about Dugo Polje, where a unit of Bane Rok, which numbering about 120 people, killed about 100 Catholic Croats. And these are the only two crimes, serious crimes, committed by Chetniks against the Croats or Muslims during World War II. I never heard of any other crime. And nobody can find it, even those who hate Chetniks the most. On the other hand, the communist crimes are numerous. They even are head-to-head with the Ustašas. However, the Ustašas killed about 1 million people, whereas according to Vladimir Dedijer, a renowned Yugoslav historian,
uključujući one ubijene u toku samog rata i prve dve
200,000. And this is the result of mass shootings that the communists effected in Serbia, and they shot everyone who was not perceived as favorable by the communist regime. Now, you have serious problems with facts because you're trying to combat facts. You are trying to supersede facts with purposeful lies, lies that are accusing me. However, all of your lies have burst like bubbles. You say that with my statements I was pounding people like with a howitzer, and that people were being killed. You are really not normal. I have a press conference in Belgrade, and at the same time somebody committed some crime around Zvornik or elsewhere, and you establish a nexus between these two events. This is what is contained in your closing argument. This really defies any logic. It makes no sense. You speak about various groups of Šešeljevci, about individual Šešeljevci who allegedly did something somewhere, but you are unable to identify them. And I put it to you that after 26th of April, there were no SRS volunteers in the area of Zvornik. You found individual Šešeljevci in various locations involved in real or fabricated crimes. And I'm saying this because I can never trust you. If you say that a crime was committed, one cannot really take your word for it. It might have happened, it might not have happened, because you are capable of inventing things, because in your mind morality and law do not go together. In a civilized world, ethics and law go hand in hand. Dating back to the ancient Greece and the Roman Empire, everybody has been insisting on the connection between morality and law. However, in your case, this causes divergences. Instead of approximating them, they are getting further and further apart. In your view, only what is quasi-legal is illegal. Your role should be to defend international justice, wherein in practice you demonstrate the opposite. This is not what international justice should look like. Your practice demonstrates that you are a tool in the hands of dark forces with one single perfidious task, and that is to harm the Serbian people, and in my particular case, to have me removed from the political stage in any way whatsoever, either by convicting me or by murdering me. You don't care, and your masters don't care either. Maybe you don't even know what your masters are planning. You are a simple instrument of globalism or mondialism of the new world order. And this new world order has demonstrated its totalitarian nature in a great number of cases. Its totalitarian nature. The methodology that you employ is a totalitarian one. It's known to be used in Hitler's time and in Stalin's time. You have only perfected it. Hitler and Stalin were more honest than the Americans and other globalists. They acted more openly. You are operating in a covert way, but your goals are the same. Now, I am very glad to have an opportunity to reveal your true nature, your objectives, the background of your deeds and your masters and inspirators. Since I feel rather tired, I think it's time now to stop for today.
I believe you must have used 6 hours and 30 minutes. Around that time. No. 6 hours and 20 minutes. You will have 3 hours and 40 minutes left next week. We shall reconvene, as you know, on Tuesday. at 2:15, and on Wednesday we'll be sitting as of 9 o'clock in the morning. Until then, I wish you all a good weekend, and we'll see you again on Tuesday.